In this video, we will walk you through the setup process for our Curved Golf Enclosure Kit, as well as provide you with some tips and tricks that help along the way. Let's get started by laying out and organizing your materials. Your Curved Golf Enclosure Kit will include all the fittings needed to set up your frame, black stop fabric ceiling and wall panels, which are designed to limit light in your enclosure, wall panel flaps, ceiling screen flaps, impact screen with top and bottom cable, ball bungees, zip ties, and foam inserts. Pipes are not included with the enclosure kit. If you ordered a pipe kit from us, they'll arrive pre-cut to the exact sizes you need. If not, you'll need to source 2-inch EMT pipes and cut them yourself according to the specifications on your frame diagram. Some more optional add-ons for the kit include projector or electronic mounts, ceiling baffles, and a back cover kit. If you purchased a back cover kit, set those materials aside. That gets added after your enclosure is complete. Detailed assembly instructions are also included to help guide you step by step in the assembly process. Make sure to have your tools handy. You'll need at least a 6mm and 3/16 hex bit socket and ratchet, rubber mallet, tape measure, pliers, cutting tool, and at least 2 8-foot tall step ladders. The first step is to assemble your frame. Be sure to carefully reference your specific frame assembly sheet included with your kit that details the placement of each of the fittings and pipes for your frame assembly. Before you start assembling the frame, make sure that your fitting screws are loose so that you can insert the EMT pipes without interference. Begin assembling your frame by connecting any of the C fittings or straight fittings to the appropriate EMT pipes marked on your frame diagram. Take note that the pipe is inserted all the way into the fittings. Tighten the C fittings to the EMT using a 6mm hex bit. Next, you'll thread the collar and hinged angle fittings onto the pipes as shown on your frame diagram. It is important to get these oriented correctly. For the collar fittings, the U-shaped tabs face the inside of the enclosure, parallel to and closer to the floor. For the hinged angle fittings, the mini pipe faces the inside of the frame when the bolts face downward. Double check you have placed them correctly, but don't worry about tightening down yet. With the collar and hinged angle fittings threaded on, start building the frame from the floor up and work from the back to the front of the enclosure. It helps to organize your pipes and fittings by where they appear on your frame diagram. Your 2 included L fittings will be assembled at the front of the enclosure with the cable fittings at the rear. Make sure to measure correctly when marking and placing your collar fitting locations. Some measurements will be taken from the start or end of a fitting. Use a marker to mark the placement of each fitting in case you need to loosen and adjust it later on. Next, insert the pipes that go vertically for your height. Put the 3-way connection fittings with the nub on the top of each rear height pipe with the nub facing the rear of the enclosure. The nub is for connecting the back cover kit, which is not included in this install video. The 3-way connection fittings without the nub go on the front of the frame. When assembling the top half of the frame, it's important to work from the back of the enclosure to the front. However, the exact order of pipe assembly, particularly if you have a crossbar, may vary depending on your setup. Use your judgment to determine the best order for safely securing the pipes and fittings. Some sections may be easier to start with based on your enclosure's size and design. The important part is to ensure the completed frame matches the provided diagram. When installing the angled pipes, it can be a little tricky to get the pipe in. It helps to start with the hinged angle fittings loose. Also make sure the end of the angled pipe doesn't extend beyond the fitting on each side. Measure the frame to make sure that all dimensions match the dimensions specified in your diagram, and double check that all fitting screws are tightened down. Confirm all collar fittings and hinged angle fittings are in the correct positions. Your frame diagram shows all the measurements for where to place them. The next step is to attach your ceiling panel. If your enclosure design includes a ceiling crossbar, you will have 2 ceiling panels marked with yellow and green ribbons. If your enclosure design does not include a crossbar, you will have a single ceiling panel marked with a green ribbon. In a similar fashion to the EMT pipes, work from the back to the front when installing more than one ceiling panel by installing the panel marked with a green ribbon first. Orient the ceiling panel so that the colored tabs will face the rear left side of the enclosure. Working diagonally from each corner, attach the corners of the ceiling panel to the frame using the included ball bungee cords. Insert the loop end of the bungee into a grommet, threading it through until the ball stops it. Wrap the cord loop around the frame tubing and hook it over the ball to create a loop. Use 2 bungees per corner. Once the 4 corners are attached and the panel is centered, use zip ties to gently secure the rest of the grommets to the frame. Tighten only enough to keep the ceiling panel with even spacing along the pipe frame. Where the ceiling flaps overlap, you may need to put a single zip tie through 2 grommets. Make sure to check and adjust the spacing between the panel and frame so that all spacing is even on all sides. Tighten or loosen the zip ties wherever the panel spacing seems to deviate from being evenly spaced. For a more professional look, rotate the head of the zip tie to the back and top of the enclosure, or cut the tails off the zip ties once you're finished with the installation. If you have a deeper enclosure, hang the additional ceiling panel marked with a yellow tab over the front of the enclosure in the same manner. Connect the 2 ceiling panels along the middle using the hook and loop fasteners, ensuring the zip ties do not interfere with the connection. Finish by attaching the front panel flap to the hook and loop strip on top of the enclosure. Attach the ceiling panel flap starting at the corners and fold it over the front of the frame. If you've purchased mount hardware accessories, follow the instructions included with those before proceeding. Next, it's time to attach your wall panels. There are 4 wall panels marked with colored tabs. The left-hand wall closest to the screen is marked with a single blue tab. The left-hand wall furthest from the screen is marked with 2 blue tabs. The right-hand wall closest to the screen is marked with a single red tab. The right-hand wall furthest from the screen is marked with 2 red tabs. Start with the wall panel marked with 1 blue tab. Before attaching the wall panel, orient the blue tab to the rear top left part of the enclosure. Uninstall the L fitting at the front bottom left of the frame. Slide the bottom sleeve of the blue tab panel onto the bottom pipe. Place a block of wood under the frame to prop it up while sliding the sleeve on. Slide the panel past the connector fitting until the collar fitting is exposed. Hold the panel in place with 3 loose zip ties through the top corner grommets. Next, hang the wall panel marked with 2 blue tabs. Orient the wall panel with the 2 blue tabs to the rear top left. Again, slide the bottom sleeved edge of the panel onto the bottom pipe. Then work the front sleeved edge of the wall panel upward onto the front vertical pipe. Once both left wall panels are installed, reinstall the L fitting. Tighten the connector, then attach the hook and loop fasteners that wrap around the corner. Lift the front panel upward and attach loose zip ties from wall to frame at the corners at the top of the wall to hold in place. Pull the front and rear wall panels towards each other in the center and connect using the hook and loop strips starting at the top. Note that you're installing to the closest hook and loop strip, leaving the furthest strip exposed where the screen will attach. Get the wall panels close together, then replace the 2 corner zip ties with a single zip tie that goes through the corner grommets of each wall panel. This gets the panels even closer together for a smooth look. Continue securing the wall panels by loosely looping a zip tie through each grommet around the top pipe. Check the fit. Tighten only enough to obtain a straight, even gap between the panel and the pipe. Now that your blue panels are installed, repeat this process to install the other red marked wall panels. Now it's time to attach your wall panel flaps. It is important to attach the wall panel flaps in the right order. First, from inside the enclosure, secure the wall panel flaps to the ceiling panel using the hook and loop fasteners. Next, get the outside wall panel flaps. They are two identical pieces of narrow black fabric with a pinched sewn pocket at the front. From the outside of the enclosure, start at the front and set the flap's sewn pocket over the corner. Smoothly attach the flap along the ceiling edge using the hook and loop strips. Check the fit. If you need to make adjustments to achieve a smoother corner, do so now. Repeat installing wall panel flaps on the other side. Now it's time to attach your impact screen to the frame. Be careful in folding your screen to keep it from touching the floor and becoming dirty. The front of the screen should be oriented with the Carl's Place logo at the bottom left of the enclosure. Loosely zip tie the top two corner grommets of the screen through the collar fitting tab nearest to the wall panel seam. Take care when using zip ties to hang the impact screen. Do not over-tighten zip ties. Zip ties should not stretch the screen, but just hold it flat. Continue loosely securing the rest of the zip ties across the top of the screen only, looping the zip tie around the cable through the small slits to the other collar fittings. Tighten only until they just start to pull on the screen. Your screen should now be loosely hanging from the frame. Next, you'll attach the bottom of the impact screen using the cable. The cable is pre-threaded through the bottom sleeve of the impact screen. Take the cable on the bottom of the screen and remove the turnbuckle and nut. Note the orientation of the turnbuckle so that you can put it back on correctly. Feed the bottom screen cable upward through the collar fitting that you pre-threaded onto the bottom pipe. You will need to lift the front of the enclosure up to do this. Also, feed the cable from the top of the screen downward through the top collar fitting tab. Reattach the turnbuckle, then loosely connect the top and bottom cable ends together on each side via the turnbuckles. Repeat on the other side. Attach bottom cable straps. From behind the screen, attach each bottom cable strap. Start with the smallest straps in the center and use progressively larger straps as you move toward the edges, clipping each one between the collar tab and the cabled bottom slit in the screen. Finish attaching the screen by adding zip ties to the bottom corners of the screen through the collar fittings. The collar fittings also have cables going through it. Smooth out the bottom of the screen by pulling the cable tautly through the bottom collar tabs. Retighten the turnbuckle securely until the cable is taut. Then firmly tighten the nuts to secure the turnbuckle in place. Add zip ties to all remaining grommets on the sides of the screen, looping the zip tie tautly around the exposed cable. Return to the top zip ties. Starting with the corners, carefully tighten each zip tie until the screen barely touches and is level with the floor. Zip ties should not stretch the screen. Tighten until barely taut. If any part of the screen is off the floor, find and adjust the zip tie that lowers it. Rotating the collar fittings on the top angled pipes upward can help reduce any sag for a smoother screen. While using your enclosure, you may need to occasionally adjust the screen to keep it smooth and just touching the floor. Your screen is hanging and looking good. Let's finish up. Next, get the screen flaps, the 7 identical pieces of narrow black fabric. Starting in the center, align the bottom edge of the flap to the white loop fastener strip on the screen first. You can loosely attach the tops to the ceiling to keep them out of your way, but don't worry about making them perfect at this time, since we'll do that when we insert the foam. Make sure to overlap each piece as you go, enough to just cover the hook and loop strips. Continue attaching flaps in this manner until you reach the ends. Make any adjustments to the center flaps, still focusing on aligning the bottom edges. Now it's time to insert your foam. Starting on one end of the screen, push the foam inserts into the gap between the enclosure and screen. Work your way across the top of the screen, covering each piece of foam with the screen flap. Make sure the foam doesn't interfere with the hook and loop connection. When you get to the end, trim off excess foam using a cutting tool. You'll need to make adjustments to smooth out the flaps and tuck in the corners for a neat fit. On the sides of the screen, fold the flaps over the grommeted edges of the screen and attach to the enclosure cover using the installed hook and loop strips. At this point, you can install any additional add-ons, such as the back cover kit or baffles, to your existing enclosure setup. Your setup is complete, and you can begin using your new Curved Golf Simulator enclosure. Go to www.carlavt.com/sharewithus to send us pics and videos to show off your build. Thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to shoot us an email, give us a call, or contact us on our website. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos on building, using, and enhancing your own golf simulator enclosure.